Hi, I'm Annie, and today I'm going to talk about my top 5 favourite sci-fi books. Science fiction is my favourite genre, but that is something that is very much more so evident when it comes to the films and the TV that I watch. I'm still fairly unread when it comes to actually sci-fi literature, but I wanted to make a list of my top 5 favourite sci-fi books, the books that define my love of the genre. And I didn't want to make a more expansive list because I didn't want to talk about books that I really enjoy, that I wouldn't consider all-time favourites. I wanted to just talk about my all-time favourites. I think I'm gonna be basically jumping straight into the list. But my love of sci-fi is really tied to my love of space, my love of physics. For 10 years I wanted to go study physics, first astronomy and then theoretical physics. I ended up going to study philosophy instead, and I think the combination of them two is really evident on this list. But without further ado, I'll be jumping onto my number 5 pick. My number 5 book is the only one on this list which I do not own, and I have only listened to it on audio twice, and it is A Song for the Wild Build by Becky. It is the first book in Monk and Robert series. Though I absolutely love this first book to the moon and back, I think it's absolutely brilliant. I didn't enjoy the second book quite as much. I thought it had a lot of its brilliance, but I wouldn't consider it a favourite. To set the scene of what this book is about, centuries before, robots of Banga gained self-awareness, laid down their tools, wandered en masse into the wilderness, never to be seen again. They faded into myth and urban legend. Now the life of the tea monk who tells this story is upended by the arrival of a robot, there to honour the old promise of checking in. The robot cannot go back until the question of, what do people need, is answered. But the answer to that question depends on who you ask and how. They will need to ask it a lot. In a world where people have what they want, does having more matter? And I think that's a very solid synopsis, and it really shows what kind of sci-fi I'm into. This is a short novella, and I'm just like absolutely astounded by how much it's able to do in such a short length. It's only 160 pages, but it explores so much. It is really kind of just a philosophical discussion. What it says in the synopsis, that isn't kind of the starting place for the plot, because you could argue there is no plot. The plot is instead just the discussions had. That is kind of why I love it. It's because it's about those discussions had. But it's not too heavy-handed philosophy. I understand that it can be too much for someone who's not interested in reading philosophy in a sci-fi book, but it's not too difficult of philosophy, but it's still not too surface level neither. It feels very honest and a humane discussion, but it's had in this most comforting and wholesome manner possible. It's not that I pick up this book to have like a very deep discussion like I would have with some other books on this list, but because those wonderful discussions are had through this layer of comfort and familiarity. It is set in this utopia, and oftentimes when we explore utopias in sci-fi, the utopias are revealed to be dystopias, because you could argue that utopias are always dystopias. Here it's really just a utopia, and you could criticize this book for being unbelievable in its utopia, but I think that is the point. The point is that it is too wonderful to even exist. But that is the basis for the discussion. But that also means that though this book has wonderful discussions, because it definitely gets you to think, it asks you questions, and you also want to ask the book questions. It's also just a fun time to be had. And I also want to have a fun time with my literature. To me, it's not enough for it to get me to think. I want to enjoy what I'm reading, and this is kind of the perfect example of that. My number 4 pick is one that I can imagine on a reread, and after I've finished this series, might be going up. Might be staying here, it might be going up. It's definitely probably gonna go up in my rankings of my all-time favourite novels. But here's where it's at now, and that is Dune by Frank Herbert. What I just said about having discussions within books, although very differently. I think most people know what Dune is about, but let's still recap. The spice melange is the rarest and most valuable element in the universe. It does everything from increasing a person's lifespan to make an interstellar travel possible, and it can only be found on a single planet, the inhospitable desert world Arrakis. Whoever controls Arrakis controls the spice, and whoever controls the spice controls the universe. How I always describe this book is it's about spice politics. That isn't all, but I think that should be the selling point, because if you go into this book expecting anything other than spice politics, you will probably be disappointed. One thing that I do not understand about people critiquing this book, and I think that I can understand a lot of the critique that is given to this book, but one thing I genuinely cannot is people saying it's either difficult to read or that Frank Herbert's prose is like dry, unpleasant, or not good. I absolutely adore Frank Herbert's prose, and I think with a lot of these, again, it's not enough for it to have wonderful exploration of themes, wonderful philosophical discussions or other discussions had within it. It also needs to be enjoyable, and either that's because it's fun, it's entertaining, or another one that usually has a bigger impact on me is having prose that captivates me, prose that I adore. And Frank Herbert does, which is why I'm always like, you know, I just said that, but I kind of understand it. I think the reason why people think Frank Herbert's prose is dry, or like, yes, you could call it dry, but why they don't like it is because it's very unpersonable. Is that the correct term? It's quite distant and it looks from afar, but it also like, it examines these people's inner worlds very closely at times, but it also just explores the larger world and the way people interact and cultures and just people and not just persons. And one thing I think Herbert does with his storytelling is he gets under your skin. And that's because he gets under the skin of the characters. And like I said, though he examines the larger groupings of people, it's always from the perspective or like by looking at individuals, because individuals make up a society, individuals make up a group. There's so much to be talked of with Dune, and now I'm like thinking, should I have put it on third place? But no. But then the themes. Everyone knows this is about spice politics and the themes of a messiah figure. And you don't understand. First of all, I love the exploration of religious themes, whether that be like of a certain real world religion or just religious themes in general, like the way that belief influences people and what we're willing to do for that belief and how that corrupts, how that can be the destruction of societies and of history. And Herbert explores that so wonderfully. Yeah, this one is one where I should just be putting this entire series, but I've only read the first two. Yeah, I'm just jumping into Children of Dune. So Dune and Dune Messiah should like, I'm gonna just say here, I know it's my top 5, but like these are single book. This is my number 4 pick. And we're gonna just jump into my number 3 pick, because otherwise I will be talking about Dune for hours. Genuinely, do I like intellectually love Dune more than this pick? Maybe. But this is the book I've reread the most that is not like Harry Potter, which I reread as a kid. And that is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. I am due for my reread of it, for my yearly reread of it. This is just like my humour. I am a sucker for absurdism, whether that be philosophical absurdism or, as is the case here, absurdist humour. I actually watched The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy film, like the 2006 one, before I read this, because that came out when I was a wee child. And I actually really enjoyed that when I was a child, and I rewatched it a lot of times, and I'm scared to rewatch it because I'm afraid I won't like it. The wonderful thing about The Hitchhikers is the way that, yes, it's mostly just incredibly ingeniously written fun, but there's so much like else there too. There is philosophy in here. Yes, it's absurdly delivered, but there is thoughts that could be had. If you stop, you could be like, there are thoughts explored in here, and that is what I really love. Like every time I read a Hitchhiker's book, whether it be this or whether it be the 2 sequels, because I've not read books 4 and 5, it's just like I keep on going. I hate that you're so smart. Like, I'm so annoyed at Douglas Adams whilst I'm reading it, because I'm just like, you are too intelligent. This is so intellectually written, and like someone could easily ignore that and just be like, it's funny. you know, it's bizarre, it's bloody ingenious. I know I'm not really talking much like I was talking with those other books. I didn't even tell you what this book is about. I just assume people know what it's about. It's an ordinary Thursday morning for Arthur Dent until his house gets demolished. The Earth follows shortly afterwards to make way for a new hyperspace bypass, and his best friend has just announced that he's an alien. At this moment, they're hurtling through space with nothing but a towel and an innocuous looking book inscribed with the large friendly words, "Don't panic. The weekend has only begun." My WhatsApp status has been "Don't panic" for like the last 8 years. I think that's just all I need to say about this book. It's absolutely brilliant. This should be like a test to all my friends who read. I should give this to them because like, if this book doesn't work for you, I don't know if we can be friends. Just because like our humor isn't the same. And I need my friends to have the same humor that I've got. You know, those other two books that I'm gonna put above this are like more intellectual. They tickle my brain more. And I don't want to say more intellectual, but like more thought-provoking, let's say that. They tickle my brain more when it comes to like philosophy and me and like thinking about life. I know this is at position number 3, but this is kind of my favorite sci-fi book of all time. Does that make sense? No, we're gonna jump into book number 2. And the book number 2 is one that is due a reread. Actually, that is kind of what made me go, I wanna make a list of my top 5 favorite sci-fi books because I want to reread this. Because when I read it, I immediately wanted to reread it, but I thought, no, I'm gonna just like put it aside for a month and then reread it, and it's been a year. But the book is The Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. Mandel. This is absolutely incredible, but it's not going to work for everyone. It's the most literary of these. This is more so literary fiction with sci-fi in it. How do you even explain it? I can't, so we're just going to read the back of the book again. Moving from Vancouver Island in 1912 to a dark colony on the moon nearly 500 years later, Sea of Tranquility is the story of a young earl cast out of England, a famous writer who leaves her young family behind to travel the earth, and a hotel detective living in the shadow of his brilliant older sister, who glimpses the chance to do something extraordinary. A virtuoso performance that is as human and tender as it is intellectually playful, Sea of Tranquility is a novel of time travel and metaphysics that precisely captures the reality of our current moment. I absolutely love and adore Chandra hybrids. Hybrid Chandra books. Which way around is that? I'm currently writing. No, I'm not currently writing. I started writing, then I put it on pause. One of my writing projects, is a Chandra hybrid novel, and it was partly inspired by this. I wanted to write something like this. This is the most me of these novels. This like encompasses who I am, both as a reader and a writer. It explores themes and philosophy through masterful character study, character exploration. But like, the amount of time we spend with these characters is so short. This is not a long book. And it's kind of a collection of, not short stories because they're all very much interlinked, connected to each other. But you don't get how they're connected until the end. But that's also the thing. It's not just that discussion and that thematic or philosophical study. It's also just like incredibly captivating through its mystery, I want to say. That's why I'm scared of rereading it. But like, the mystery I think is better when you know the answer. But when you're reading it for the first time, that is really what pulls you through the story. But that is not what makes you fall in love with the story, which is why I love this so much. It's a very difficult one to talk about, especially because with all those other ones I found notes that I had written. I didn't write any notes about this book, and I think that only showcases how much I truly loved it. I read it incredibly fast through, and I didn't write down anything. I didn't annotate this, and I'm kind of so annoyed, but I'm kind of also glad that I just read it through. All I have of this book is up here, but I can like so vividly remember this entire book. Each of the characters are so vivid in my mind, and some of these characters literally exist only on like 20 pages of this book, and yet they feel complete and just characters in whose lives I grew up so attached to. That is not a grammatically correct sentence, I think, but this book's just awed me and just absolutely baffled me more than any other book, at least any other sci-fi book. I might even say any other book ever has. But what is my favourite What is my favourite sci-fi book of all time? I think it's the best if I read my very short Goodreads review of this before I show you the book. I really said that this may be my favourite sci-fi book I've ever read when I finished it. Maybe. Bitch, please. It is. No questions. And this is me 4 hours later. If my feelings for this continue to solidify at this rate, well, I don't want to be the one doing the calculations. This book already fried all the intelligence cells of my brain. It's 2001 A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke. I want to say everyone knows what this book is about, but I don't know, so we're gonna recap. The discovery of a black monolith on the moon leads to a manned expedition deep into the solar system in the hope of establishing contact with an alien intelligence. Yet long before the crew can reach their destination, the voyage descends into disaster. For context, if you ask me why it's my favourite film of all time, I will answer 2001 A Space Odyssey. Is it technically my second favourite after The Two Towers? Yes, but that is what my answer will always be. And I was really scared of reading this book. I only read it this year. I was really scared because I was like, there's no way that book can hold up to my favourite film of all time. The expectations were astronomical. Yet somehow this book managed to surpass them. Not even reach them, surpass them. I don't even genuinely know which I love more. I mean, I suppose I've got to say the film because like this is not my favourite book of all time. And can I just say that I love all the books that I rank above this more than any other film. Any film I've ever watched. That feels a bit weird. It's coming apart. I'm aghast. I know I just said that The Sea of Tranquility is me in a book. But this book just showcases my love for space like nothing else can. If you ask me why I always wanted to be a physicist, why did I want to know so much about the world, why I've always been so awed by what is out there, I can just answer this book. And no other book has awed me. I know I just said about that awed, I mean awed in a different manner. Like this is the awe of universe. Awe of existence, awe of not understanding anything. That awe I've got for space, no other book, no film, no nothing has ever encapsulated it quite like that. And I think that is why I want to say I love this book more, because I think though the film is my favourite film of all time, a lot of why it's my favourite film of all time goes into the filmmaking of it and what it looks like, etc, etc, etc. I think when we talk about the philosophy, the awe, the themes, this book does all of them much better. Because you can't do that in the film. And that's not a critique for the film, because the film is doing something so completely different. These are companion pieces. I don't think this book offers an explanation of what happens in the film. I take these as two completely different and separate pieces. This offers Clarke's explanation of what happens in the film. My interpretation of the film is still completely different, and this book, and loving this book has not changed that. But the way Clarke describes is just absolutely stellar. That sentence was going somewhere completely different, but like, One thing I really love that I used in my notes is that there is this quiet slowness and serenity to this book. And that weirdly transcends into one of my comments that I've always had about the film, and I will have that opinion about this book as well, is that you could consider this, and I would consider this and the film, cosmic horror. And now you might be like, that's not horror, but like, this book is genuinely, to me, more terrifying than most, if not all, the horror that I've read. And I'm a major horror fan. There is just something so absolutely devastatingly haunting about the unknown. Again, I could make an essay on this book. I could make a 2-3 hour analysis video on this book, and that is just how much I love this, but I don't think I'm gonna. I think the awe is all you need. It's just the absolute and utter awe. Another thing that I love is that I wrote after finishing this book. Arthur C. Clarke really decided to say, yes, I am the best sci-fi author. The definite. I don't think anything is gonna triumph this, really. I think this might just be my favourite sci-fi book of all time. Like when it comes to like sci-fi, talking about why I love sci-fi, why sci-fi is my favourite genre. We might have found the one. We might have found the definite one. And I think that's a good place to end. Those were my 5 favourite sci-fi books. The sci-fi books that defined my taste, the sci-fi books that defined me as a sci-fi reader. I'm so excited to find more favourites and redo this list, hopefully as a top 10 instead someday. I think any and every sci-fi fan would benefit from reading them. Not everyone's gonna love them. And I'm not saying this is an odd list, that this is a novel list. These are very beloved sci-fi works. But I think they're beloved sci-fi works for a reason. What I actually want to hear is like, have you got any recommendations for me that you think I would really enjoy, knowing that those are my favourites? Because I can't wait to read more sci-fi. I've not been reading sci-fi for the last 3 months, whereas I really started a year off with reading a lot of sci-fi, and I really want to jump back into reading sci-fi. And I also would like to hear, what is your favourite sci-fi book? The one or the 5, but like sci-fi is like where my heart is at. It might always be where my reading is at, but it's where my heart is at. And I'm rambling on, so I think I will be ending this video, but I hope you liked it. I hope you will stick around, and I hope if you're not new here, you will share some recommendations or it's just your favourite. I can't say bye. How do sci-fi people say bye? What is Klingon for?